Hello everyone, Saida here. So today's video is going to be about shadow work, okay? So if you don't know what shadow work is based on the concept of the shadow self. And when we're talking about the shadow self is the aspect of us that we'd rather not look at. It contains the memories of our deepest, darkest traumas, our fears, and the beliefs that we've created around these experiences that we've had in the past, and perhaps even things that we are not aware of in this lifetime, other experiences from other lifetimes, if you believe in that sort of thing. Okay? So, and the concept of doing shadow work is to face these shadows and to work with them and to get very clear on them and to see if we can root them out and integrate them into our awareness, into the light, okay? So that we become a more full version of ourselves, okay? So that's the concept of shadow work. But today, I want to talk about shadow work based on an experience that I had at work, because I feel like it's important to address this just in case other people are thinking in this way, okay? So I was at work and I was dealing with a customer. And this customer asked me, do you have any readers, or because we have psychics and intuitives at work, do you have any readers that deal with the shadow or deal with shadow work? And I was like, yeah, like a lot of our readers can do that. A lot of them can deal with shadow work. And few people that I had in mind kind of flashed in my head. So there were some that I was thinking of, although I didn't say it. And she said she feels that in the past, the people that she has dealt with as readers haven't been able to tap into that for her. And I was like, okay, so that's interesting. And I was just listening. And I wanted her to go into deeper detail as to what it is that she was referring to when it came to the shadow aspect of herself. So one of the things that she was talking about was she has issues living in New York, which is where I'm living. So she has issues living in New York, and she feels that this is somehow a reflection of her, which she's not necessarily wrong about that. But the next thing that she said, like, concerned me a little bit. Because she said that, you know, in New York, there's a lot of greedy people. You know, there's a lot of greedy people and angry people. So, you know, there must be a reason, like, they're a reflection of me, so there must be a reason for that. And I said, okay, but that's tricky, okay? Because, and I'm going to explain why. I feel that that perspective of people being reflections of you, it's not necessarily wrong, but you have to know exactly how to work with that and how to use that perspective to help you. And I'll explain that in a second. It's kind of deep, so I have to like kind of sift through and organize this in a way that makes sense. So she says she's living in New York, and New York is filled with greedy people, and blah, blah, blah. And she said that they're a reflection of her. And I said to her, well, all because you're living in New York, and New York is filled with greedy people, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're greedy. Because that's what she was saying. And she did say that. I forgot to say that. That because she's amongst greedy people, there's a part of her that's greedy that she's not accepting. And I told her that all because you're surrounded with greedy people doesn't necessarily mean that you're greedy. Okay? And that's true. Like, if you're surrounded by greedy people and you have an issue with that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a greedy person. It could mean, however, that you have an issue accepting that the world is filled with greedy people, or that you've had an experience with a greedy person and there's a part of you that has difficulty accepting that experience and dealing with it on a deeper level. And that's going to depend on the person, how deep we're going to be able to go with that. And I gave her the other scenario that, like, for instance, if you're dealing with somebody who is a rapist or a child molester or something like that, if you have an issue with somebody like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a child molester or that you're a rapist. Do you see what I'm getting at here? So this takes me into the next aspect of this conversation, is when we're talking about people being reflections of us, okay? That all because one of the things that she was saying was that we're all connected, and you know, if there are people around me that are a certain way, there must be an aspect of me that's also like that. And I feel like that can get confusing really fast, first of all, because that's true, but not in that exact sense. Like, we are all connected, but all because there are people around me that are acting a certain way, you know, and I have an issue with it, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like them. There's a part of me that has issues dealing with people like that, maybe based off of a past experience or my own values, but if there's anything that needs to be worked on, one aspect, it could be my level of compassion, you know, for these people and accepting them, and choosing to view them from the lens of just being people, having a human experience and having to deal with all of these different facets of being human. Just giving you an example. But basically what I'm trying to say is that if somebody is acting a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're like that. Okay, that brings me to the next part of this conversation. That we have to be careful of this perspective of, how can I say this? Like, I'll put it in the perspective of what the experience was at work. So I'm New York and New York is me. So we have to be careful with that, okay? Because we cannot go into shadow work with that perspective and expect that we're going to get benefit out of that. Reason being is because that perspective is mental. So you're trying to understand the I am this and this is me from a mental perspective, and it doesn't work that way. And first of all, if you actually believed that you are everything and everything is you, the topic of shadow work wouldn't even be coming up. That perspective is actually a very, how you say, like, transcendent perspective. And if you actually believe that, and if it was really absorbed into your being, you wouldn't even be worried about, you know, all the shadow aspects and what one person is doing that's affecting you, because that perspective alone shows that you still see things from a perspective of separation. You still believe that there's some kind of separation between you and everybody else if you're still grappling with this issue of dealing with some opposition or dealing with someone expressing something that you have a problem with. You know what I mean? So there's still like a separation there. So we have to be careful with this perspective of all of us being connected, because the thing is, like I said, it's not wrong, but we are all unique expressions of the divine. And even though we're connected by an energetic thread, that doesn't mean that we're all the same person, and it doesn't mean that we're all going to express our energetic signature in the same way. We all have a unique expression, you know, so we have to be careful of that. And I feel that when we try to go into shadow work with that mental perspective that this person was expressing, we can cause ourselves unnecessary stress, and we might not actually be getting anywhere. You know, as someone who's been dealing with my shadow for years and feeling triggered by life experience to go deep into the shadow, I felt like I didn't really have much of a choice. You always have a choice, but if you choose the opposite of that, you're really gonna mess yourself up. Dealing with the shadow, you have to come at the shadow from the perspective of where you are, what you actually believe, you know, what your feelings are, where your emotions are. And it can't come from a perspective of you trying to piece things together that you don't fully understand yet. That's not going to be helpful to you. So be authentic about your shadow work. Be authentic about how you feel and what your beliefs are, where your memories are rooted, and how that has created the beliefs that you currently have about yourself and your experience. And, you know, it's like a tree. It keeps kind of rooting and branching off to create your reality. Okay, so I wanted to discuss that. I felt like it was important. I hope this video has been helpful to you, and I hope it gave you some perspective and insight on ways that shadow work can be useful to you and ways that you can approach it. So I'll see you around for the next video. Take care.